Good evening, Blackpine. Eddy Franklin here on KBPN 104.7 FM. We're on October 21st, 2007 at 2 minutes past 10. You know, I was just sitting here before we went on air, looking out at the fog rolling through town, and I realized something. We're 1 week away from the Harvest Festival. Main Street's going to be packed with people, the whole town's going to smell like cider and fried dough, and somewhere around 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, I'm going to eat my body weight in apple fritters and regret nothing. But tonight, it's just us. There's a thick fog outside, folks, as you have seen all day, thick enough that I can barely see past the Hendersons' place next door. My wife's downstairs reading. She made some amazing apple cider this afternoon. The house smells like apples, cinnamon, cloves, the whole works, and you'd be right to think I drank half a liter of it. This is my favorite kind of night. The kind where you're glad to be inside, warm, with nowhere else to be. So grab whatever you're drinking, coffee, tea, cider, or something stronger, and settle in. I've got news from the week, some really good letters. I'm finally going to tell you the origin story of our beloved diner, the Sweet and Tart. And somewhere in here, I'll teach you why apples are so damn useful in the kitchen. Let's begin. So, like I just said, the Harvest Festival begins on Saturday and will go on until Tuesday. If you volunteered, you're showing up Friday afternoon at 3 to help set up. My wife volunteered us both, which I found out about Thursday, so I guess I'm hauling tables Friday whether I like it or not. Marriage, folks, it's a beautiful thing. This year they're doing something new, a pie-eating contest Sunday at 2 p.m. First prize is $50 to Miller's Market, which honestly seems low for the amount of dignity you'll lose with apple pie all over your face. But hey, people are already signing up. The information booth has a clipboard if you're interested in humiliating yourself publicly. Weather looks perfect, mid-50s with clear skies. Bring a jacket for evening, though. It'll drop fast once the sun goes down. Now, here's something interesting. You know the old water mill down by Pine River? Town council finally decided to do something about it. They're organizing a cleanup crew for Saturday, November 3rd, the weekend after the festival, 9 a.m. at the site. Bring gloves and boots. Be ready to haul junk and cut back overgrowth. Smart timing, actually. Let everyone enjoy the festival first, then tackle the millwork when things calm down. Sweet and Tart is providing lunch for volunteers, which probably explains why the sign-up sheet's already pretty full. Elizabeth knows what she's doing. They're not restoring it yet, just clearing enough debris so an engineer can get in there and tell them if the building's even salvageable. Mayor Hutchins is being cautious about it, which I appreciate. No promises, no grand plans, just a let's see what we got approach. In much more exciting news, and I'm being slightly sarcastic here, Blackpine High beat Cedarville 21-14 Friday night. Michael Dawes scored again. That's 10 touchdowns this season. The kid's going to get recruited by somebody if he keeps this up. Next game's Friday, home against Lincoln. My wife went to the game. I stayed home. I'm not much for high school football, but she likes supporting the town, so she goes. She came home and gave me a 15-minute play-by-play that I mostly didn't understand. But she was happy, so I nodded and smiled in the right places. That's marriage, too. Oh, here's something odd. 3 different people called Sheriff Dawes this week about a black bear near the hiking trails past Hadley's Orchards. 3 separate sightings. All described the same bear, big, probably male, tearing up rotted logs looking for grubs. Sheriff says it's normal for October. Bears are packing on weight before winter, so they're out more, eating everything they can find. His advice: make noise when you're hiking. Don't surprise it. Don't approach it. Definitely don't try to feed it. Black bears around here generally want nothing to do with people, but they're still wild animals. Use your head. Still, 3 sightings in 1 week is unusual. Not alarming, just notable. Bears have always been around, but you don't usually see them this close to the orchards. Maybe the forest isn't providing enough food this year. Maybe the bear's just bold. Who knows? Let's see, what else? The drama club's doing Our Town first 2 weekends in November. Tickets are $8, $5 for students and seniors. You can get them at the school or at the door. I haven't seen a high school play in probably 30 years, but my wife wants to go, so we're going. I'll let you know if it's any good. Dorothy at the library says the fall reading program is going strong. Lots of people are already done with their 5 books. The prize basket looks good this year. Local honey, apple butter, Harvest Gold cider, some other stuff. If you haven't started, you've got about a month before the Thanksgiving drawing. Oh, and starting November 1st, the library's open until 7 p.m. on Thursdays now, instead of 6. Dorothy got a small budget increase from the council. Good for her. That woman works hard. That's the news. Let's get to some announcements. Sweet and Tarts still looking for weekend breakfast help. 6 a.m. to noon, Saturday and Sunday. Talk to Elizabeth if you're interested. The old cinema's showing Ratatouille this weekend during the festival. Family movie, good for kids. Then, starting November 2nd, Claire's doing her horror marathon. Psycho, The Shining, Rosemary's Baby, Night of the Living Dead, 1 per weekend through November. I'm definitely going to The Shining. Saw it in theaters back in 1980, scared the hell out of me. Curious to see if it still holds up. Church potluck got moved to Sunday evening this week because of the festival. 7 p.m. after evening service. Everyone's welcome. Bring food if you've got it. Miller's Market is expanding their local products section. If you make something, preserves, honey, baked goods, whatever, and you want to sell it there, talk to Bill. He's looking for quality local stuff. It's good to see him supporting Blackpine producers. And here's something my wife finds very exciting. Apparently, there's this new phone called the iPhone that came out a few months ago. It plays music and gets on the internet, and probably makes you breakfast for all I know. She saw someone using one at the grocery store and came home talking about it for 20 minutes. I have a flip phone that makes calls. And honestly, that's all I need from a phone, but apparently that makes me old-fashioned. I still use the rotary phone in the kitchen because I like the sound it makes. The future's leaving me behind, folks, and I'm fine with it. All right, that's announcements. If you need something mentioned next week, write to P.O. Box 147. You know the drill. I'm going to step away for a minute. When I come back, I'll tell you about Thomas Sweet and Margaret Tart, and how a bakery and a cafe became one of Blackpine's oldest businesses. Be right back. The fog's gotten thicker. I can't see the forest at all now. Just the glow of town lights diffused through gray, like the whole world ends at the edge of Main Street. It's eerie in a comfortable way, if that makes sense. The kind of eerie that makes you glad you're inside. There's a part of me that wants to grab my camera and go out there, walk down Main Street and take some pictures of the streetlights and all that fog, the way they create these perfect halos of light, the way everything gets soft and dreamlike. The fog does something to this town, makes it look like an old photograph, like something out of time. Maybe I'll do it after the show if I still have some energy left in me. My lovely wife just brought me fresh coffee. She does that every week during the show, brings it up without me asking. Small kindnesses, you know, those matter. All right, story time. Last week I told you how Blackpine got its name, and a few of you wrote in with questions which I'll get to later. But tonight I promised you the story of Sweet and Tart, and it's a good one. Romance, chance, 2 people with absurdly perfect last names. So, this is the story. It was in 1889. Blackpine's been around for about 30 years, logging's booming, the mill's running full-time, and the town's growing. That summer, 2 people arrived separately, both with the same plan, open a food business on Main Street. First is Thomas Sweet. He's a baker from Ohio, late 20s, learned the trade from his father and grandfather before him. He's heard Blackpine's growing and needs services, so he comes west with his savings and his recipes, ready to open a bakery. Second is Margaret Tart. She's a cook from Pennsylvania, also late 20s, who's been running a small restaurant back home and decided she wanted something new, somewhere new. She's also heard about Blackpine, also wants Main Street, also has savings and ambition. The building owner, Herbert Gaines, had two qualified tenants wanting one space, so he proposed they share it, split the rent, run it together. He pointed out it made sense. Thomas's bakery and Margaret's cooking would complement each other well in a diner setting, and splitting the rent would help both of them get established. Neither was thrilled about sharing, but they could both see the logic in it. So they agreed, shook hands somewhat reluctantly, and opened as the Blackpine Diner in September 1889. The first few months were professional but distant. They worked around each other more than with each other, divided the kitchen space, kept to their own stations, exchanged pleasantries, but nothing more. There were small disagreements about kitchen organization or scheduling, but nothing hostile. Just two people sharing a workspace who hadn't quite figured out how to be partners yet. The business did extremely well, though. Customers liked having fresh bread with their meals, liked being able to get both breakfast pastries and a proper cooked lunch. The combination worked exactly as Herbert predicted. But Thomas and Margaret remained polite strangers, sharing a building and not much else. Then, one evening in late November, something changed. It had been a long day, busy from open to close, barely a moment to breathe. Margaret was exhausted, cleaning up after the last customer left. Thomas was finishing a late batch of rolls for the next morning. Neither had eaten anything since breakfast. Margaret had been thinking about her grandmother all day. It was her birthday, and she'd passed away 2 years before. That morning, Margaret had decided to make her grandmother's chicken and herb stew, the one she'd grown up eating, the one her grandmother had taught her to make when she was 12. She added her own touches to it, a bit more thyme than her grandmother used, a splash of white wine, adjustments she'd developed over years of cooking. She wasn't planning to serve it or sell it, she just wanted to make it, to feel close to that memory. The smell filled the kitchen the whole day as it simmered. Thomas, working at his table, kept glancing over, but didn't say anything. When Margaret finally sat down at the small back table with a bowl that evening, looking tired and a little sad, she looked over at Thomas still working and offered him some. They sat together for the first time since opening, sharing that meal in tired silence. Thomas took a bite and stopped. The stew was rich and complex, herbs he couldn't quite identify, chicken so tender it fell apart, vegetables cooked perfectly. It was the kind of food that tasted like care, like time, like something made with infinite love. That stew broke the ice between them, and Margaret could tell the effect it had on him. They talked that night for the first time, really talked, about their grandmothers, about learning to cook and bake, about why they'd come west, about what they hoped to build. The professional distance dissolved. They saw each other differently after that, not as inconvenient business partners, but as people who understood craft, who cared about quality, who put something of themselves into their work. After that evening, things changed between them. They started cooking for each other, sharing techniques, asking opinions. Margaret taught Thomas her grandmother's herb combinations. Thomas showed her his family's pastry recipes. They started developing dishes together, combining their skills. The tension disappeared, replaced by collaboration, by respect, by something that felt like friendship and was becoming something more. By spring of 1890, people in town noticed they worked together differently, moving around the kitchen and sink, finishing each other's thoughts, laughing at shared jokes. By summer, they were taking their morning coffee together before opening, talking quietly while the bread baked. By fall, he built her a shelf for her special spices without her asking. By winter, they were engaged. They married in February 1891, right there in Blackpine Community Church. The whole town came. Herbert Gaines gave a speech at the reception about how he'd hoped they'd make something beautiful together, and they had. Years later, Thomas famously said he knew he would marry Margaret the moment he tasted her stew because he loved it so much and realized her cooking was just an extension of herself, that every dish she made carried something of who she was. If he loved her food that deeply, how could he not love her? Easy to say in hindsight, but the romantic in me wants to believe him. After the wedding, they renamed the business. Blackpine Diner became Sweet and Tart, a combination of their names, yes, but also a description of what they'd built together. Thomas's sweet baking and Margaret's perfectly seasoned cooking, two styles that complemented each other, like they did. They ran it together for over 40 years, had 3 children who all worked there growing up. When Thomas died in 1935, Margaret kept it running. When she died in 1942, their eldest daughter took over. It's been passed down through the family ever since. The building's been renovated and expanded, but it's the same spot. Elizabeth Sweet, who runs it now, is Thomas's great-great-granddaughter, carrying on something that started with 2 people sharing a meal after a long day, discovering they'd found something neither was looking for. I love that story because it reminds me that the best things often start simply, with generosity, with sharing what you have, with taking a moment to sit down together. Margaret offered Thomas a bowl of stew, and that small act of kindness changed both their lives. Next time you're at Sweet and Tart, think about that November evening in 1889. 2 tired people sharing food and discovering connection. That moment is still there, in every meal they serve. All right, that's the Sweet and Tart story. Let's take another break, and when we come back, I'll get to your letters. Back in a moment. It's funny how Sunday nights feel different than other nights. There's a weight to them, not bad, just present. The weekend ending, work week starting tomorrow, that liminal space between rest and routine. I've always liked Sunday nights for that reason. They feel significant somehow. Plus, I get to talk to you folks. That's become part of my Sunday rhythm now. Making coffee, coming up here to the attic, turning on the equipment, settling in. My wife jokes that I'm more excited about Sunday nights than I am about date night. She's not entirely wrong. All right, letters. P.O. Box 147, Blackpine. That's where you send them, and I try my best to read every single one. Let's see what we've got this week. First one's from Patricia. Eddy, my husband retired last month after 35 years at the mill. I thought he'd be happy to finally relax, but he's miserable. Wanders around the house, starts projects, and doesn't finish them, complains about being bored. I suggested hobbies, but he says he's too old to start something new. How do I help him adjust? It's driving both of us crazy. Patricia, this is so common it's almost predictable. Your husband spent 35 years with structure, purpose, a place to be every morning. That's gone now. He's grieving it even if he doesn't realize that's what this is. Here's what I'd tell you. Give him time, but also give him something to do. Not hobbies. He needs purpose, something useful. The watermill cleanup this Saturday? That's physical work, helps the community, gives him something concrete to point at and say, I did that. Festival volunteering, church projects, library help, anything that gets him out of the house doing something that matters, or talk to him about what he actually misses. Is it the routine, the social aspect, the feeling of accomplishment? Once you know what he's missing, you can help him find it elsewhere. And Patricia, be patient with yourself too. You're both adjusting to being around each other way more than you're used to. That takes time. You'll figure it out. Next letter. Next letter. Eddy, I know this is unconventional, but I'm hoping you can help me with something. About 6 months ago, I met this woman named Jennifer, who works at Miller's Market. We're both in our 20s, and we both listen to your show every Sunday night. We've actually become friends by talking about it. I go in there probably more than I need to just to talk to her, and I've realized I have feelings for her, but I'm shy, and I haven't been able to work up the courage to tell her in person. So, Jennifer, if you're listening, this is David Chen. I think you're amazing. You make me laugh every time we talk. And I'd really like to take you to dinner sometime. Just the two of us. David, that took guts. Putting yourself out there is never easy, and doing it on the radio in front of the whole town. That's bold. I respect it. Jennifer, if you're listening, David just put his heart on the line for you. Whether you feel the same way or not, I hope you'll give him an answer. He deserves that much. David, let us know how this goes, all right? I'm rooting for you. Life is indeed too short to leave important things unsaid. You did the brave thing. Now you just have to wait and hope. Next one. Let's see here. Dear Eddy, I'm trying to get in touch with my best friend from high school. We lost contact when he moved to Cedarville about 5 years ago. His name is Hugh Jass. If Hugh Jass is listening, this is your old buddy from Blackpine. I miss you, man. We used to get into all kinds of trouble together, remember? I'd love to reconnect. Give me a call if you hear this. Well, that's really nice. Friendships from our younger years, those matter in a special way. And 5 years is too long to lose touch with someone you care about, especially when they're only one town over in Cedarville. Hugh, if you're listening out there, and I hope you are, your friend misses you and wants to reconnect. Now, whoever wrote this didn't leave their own name, but I'm guessing if you and Hugh go way back like they say, you'll know exactly who's reaching out. Old friends like Hugh are worth the effort to track down, and Cedarville's only 20 minutes away, so there's really no excuse not to reach out to Hugh and reconnect. It's never too late to pick up where you left off. So, Hugh, if you're hearing this, give your old friend a call. I hope you two find each other again. Next letter, this one's from Robert. Eddy, I've been listening since you started, and I really appreciate the show. My question is about the Black Pines. Last week you told the story about how they got their name, and you mentioned theories about what caused them to turn black. Has anyone ever studied them scientifically? Sent samples to a lab or anything? I'm curious if there's an actual explanation beyond the lightning story. Robert, that's a really good question, and actually, yes, there were some scientists who came out here a few years back. Must have been 2003 or 2004, I think. We were told that they were here to do some analysis. They were a couple of researchers from the university, brought all their equipment, took samples, the whole deal. But they were city people through and through. Didn't want to be here, made that pretty clear from the start. Complained about the accommodations, complained about the roads, complained about not being able to get decent coffee. They treated the whole thing like they had been exiled to the middle of nowhere, as punishment. Spent more time griping about cell phone reception than actually studying the trees, from what I heard. They were out there for maybe a week, took their samples, and left. Never heard back from them, never saw any published results, never got a report, nothing. So either they didn't find anything interesting, or they did find something and never bothered to tell anyone in Blackpine about it. My guess is they just wanted to get back to the city and forgot all about us. So, to answer your question, yes, someone tried to study them scientifically, but I couldn't tell you what they found, if anything. The Black Pines are still a mystery, at least to those of us who live here. Part of me thinks someone should try again, maybe someone who actually cares about the answer. But another part of me likes the mystery. The Black Pines are part of Blackpine's character. They're our strange landmark, our local legend. Not everything needs an explanation, Some things can just be what they are. But if anyone out there has information about those studies, or knows what happened to the results, write in. I'd be curious to hear it. Last letter before we move on. This one just says, found car keys, Honda keychain, and it's signed Dorothy. No extra commentary, just the facts. That's Dorothy for you. If those are your keys, you know where to find them. All right, let me take one more break. When I come back, I'll teach you something about apples that'll make you appreciate them even more than you already do. Back in a moment. Halloween's coming up soon. October 31st, that's Wednesday night. I can see some houses already have decorations up, plastic pumpkins, paper ghosts. When I was a kid, Halloween in Blackpine was magical. Everyone knew everyone, so you could trick or treat all over town safely. We'd come home with pillowcases full of candy, sort it all out on the living room floor, trade with our siblings. Things haven't changed as much as you'd think. Kids still trick or treat here. It's still safe. That's worth something in 2007. All right, let's talk about apples. Specifically, let's talk about why apples are so useful in cooking, and it all comes down to something called pectin. Now, I'm far from being a scientist, so I did some research on the Google and tried to translate that into plain English. And today I want to talk about pectin. If you've ever made jam or jelly, you've heard of pectin. It's what makes the jam set, what transforms liquid fruit into something spreadable. But most people don't realize that apples are absolutely loaded with pectin, and that's a huge part of why apples have been so central to human food culture for thousands of years. So, what is pectin? Technically, it's a complex polysaccharide found in the cell walls of plants. In practical terms, it's what gives fruit structure, what holds plant cells together. When you cook fruit with sugar and acid, pectin molecules link up and form a gel. That's the magic of jam making. All fruits have some pectin, but apples, especially certain varieties, have a lot. That's why traditional recipes often use apples to help other fruits set. Making strawberry jam that won't gel? Add some apple. The apple's pectin will help the whole batch come together. Here's what's interesting. Pectin isn't evenly distributed in an apple. The highest concentration is in the skin and core. The flesh has less. That's why old recipes tell you to include peels and cores when making preserves. You tie them in cheesecloth, cook them with everything else, then remove them before jarring. You're extracting that concentrated pectin. Different apples have different pectin levels. Generally, tart apples have more than sweet ones. Granny Smiths are very high in pectin. That's partly why they're so good for baking. All that pectin provides structure, keeps them from turning to mush. Crab apples, those tiny sour things most people won't eat raw, are incredibly high in pectin. That's why they make excellent jelly despite being too tart for eating. Pectin levels also change as apples ripen. Unripe apples have more pectin than ripe ones. As fruit ripens, enzymes break down the pectin, which is why ripe fruit gets softer. This is useful information. If your apples are very ripe, you might need to add commercial pectin or mix in some underripe apples to get a good set. But before commercial pectin existed, people understood this through experience. They knew certain apples made better sauce, certain ones made better pies, certain ones made better preserves. They were working with pectin levels without knowing the chemistry. When you make apple butter, that thick, dark, spreadable preserve, you're taking full advantage of pectin. You cook apples down for hours, concentrating sugars and pectin until you get that perfect, spreadable consistency. My mother used to make apple butter every fall. She'd cook it for 8-10 hours, stirring constantly toward the end. The whole house would smell incredible. The pectin made it possible, that transformation from sauce to butter, liquid to spread. Pectin is also why apples work so well in pies. When you bake an apple pie, the pectin helps the filling set up, creates structure, and keeps it from being too runny. Different apples create different textures because of varying pectin levels. That's not accidental. That's chemistry. And here's a bonus. Pectin is good for you. It's soluble fiber, which means it dissolves in water and forms a gel in your digestive system. It can help with digestion, can help lower cholesterol, can help stabilize blood sugar. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's truth in that, partly because of pectin. So next time you're eating applesauce or spreading apple butter or cutting into a pie, think about pectin. Think about those molecules creating structure and texture. Think about centuries of cooks figuring out how to use apples in every possible way, working with chemistry they didn't understand but mastered through practice. That's your apple lesson for tonight. Next week, I'll talk about something else. Different variety, different aspect of apple growing. Whatever seems interesting. If you've got requests, write in. Right. So the Harvest Festival starts Saturday. 4 days of the town coming together, celebrating the harvest, being a community. I'm looking forward to it. There's something about Main Street closed to traffic, lined with booths, everyone out at the same time, enjoying the same thing. That's rare these days. I'll be there Saturday afternoon, probably eating too much. If you see me, say hello. I'm not great with names. My wife reminds me of this constantly, but I enjoy meeting listeners. So that's it for tonight, folks. We'll be back next Sunday, October 28th. Right in the middle of festival weekend, I'll have news, more letters, maybe some festival stories. Until then, stay warm, be kind to each other, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for listening. Thank you for writing in. Thank you for being part of this. This is Eddie Franklin, and you've been listening to Blackpine After Dark on KBPN 104.7 FM. See you next Sunday.